So the probability of an event is written as P and then parentheses that event inside of it. It measures the likelihood that the event will occur. Probability is measured on a scale of 0 to 1, with 0 being impossible and 1 being certain. It can be expressed as a fraction, decimal, or a percentage. So go ahead and write that down. Okay, so looking at the probability scale here, we have impossible, unlikely, as likely as not, likely, and then certain. So as I stated before, um, if you're looking at impossible, that's what we call 0. If you're talking about certain, that's what we say is 1. As likely as not is halfway in between. So what would you put there? 1/2. Unlikely, we're talking about half of 1/2, which is 1/4. And then likely, what do you think goes there? 3/4. What would that look like as decimals? What would 0 look like as a decimal? 0. What would 1/4 look like as a decimal? 0.25. What would 1/2 look like as a decimal? 0.5. What would 3/4 look like as a decimal? 0.75. What would 1 look like as a decimal? 1. All right, so now let's look at percentages. What would 0 look like as a percentage? 0%. What would 0.25 or 25 hundredths look like as a percentage? 25%. What would zero point 0.5 look like as a percentage? 50%. What would 0.75 look like as a decimal? 75%. What would 1 look like as a decimal? 100%. Okay? So if we talk about something that's certain, something that's 100% going to happen, or if you look at something that's impossible, there are very few things in life that are 100% certain, and there are very few things in life that are 0% or impossible. Okay? Most things we deal with in life fall in between impossible and certain. Like if I'm talking about winning the lottery, it's not impossible, but it's close to being impossible, right? It probably won't happen to you. If we're talking about coming to school tomorrow, that's not certain. It's not certain for any of us. We don't know what could happen, but it's probably more than likely. Does that make sense? That's what this scale means. All right, so let's look at the examples here. The first example is you roll a six-sided number cube and it lands on a number 1 or greater. So a six-sided number cube is a die, like dice, one of the dice. And you roll a number 1 or greater on that die. What would you say that would be? Is that impossible, unlikely, as likely as not, likely, or certain? It's certain. Because if you think about a die, all of the numbers are greater than 1. It's either 1 or greater. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So this is certain. So we're going to write the event is certain to occur because all numbers on a die are greater than 1. The second one, a bag contains 5 red and 5 blue marbles. You reach into the bag and you pull out a purple marble. What would you say that was? If you have red and blue in a bag, what is the probability that you pull out a purple? It's impossible. It can't happen if there's no purple in the bag. So this one, the VIN is impossible because there are no purple marbles. As there are no purple marbles. All right, last but not least, we have number 3. A spinner is divided into 5 equal sections labeled 1 through 5. You spin it and it lands on an even number. So it's labeled 1 through 5. You spin it and it lands on an even number. So we're going to do an example of probability. So down here is your total, and then these are your favorable outcomes. Favorable meaning this is what I'm looking for. I want these outcomes. How many favorable outcomes are there? If I'm looking at even numbers between 1 and 5, there's 2. It's 2 and 4. Okay, so there's 2 favorable outcomes. How many total outcomes are there? 5, because there's 5 sides or 5 sections on that spinner. So it's 2 out of 5. Now, how would I get that as a percentage? I have to make it a what first? It's already a fraction. What do I have to make it first? A decimal. How do I make any fraction a decimal? I divide the numerator by the denominator. So the numerator is 2 being divided by 5. 5 goes into 2, 0 times. What do I do here? Decimal, and then another 0. 5 goes into 20. 4 times 5 is 20. So it is 0.4. What is that as a percentage? 4%. In order to turn a decimal into a percentage, I move the decimal to the right twice. So it's 40%. What would you say that was? Is that likely? Is that certain? Is that as likely as not? Is that unlikely? Where does that fall? Unlikely. I'd say that was unlikely. Does that make sense? Any questions you think your classmates might have as they work through this video?